Right now, Australia, apparently, we're officially back in a per capita recession. But there could be a silver lining for struggling mortgage holders.
Aussie crypto exchange SwiftX is giving footy fans a chance to win Game 3 State of Origin tickets, flights and accommodation. Simply trade $100 to enter. Visit swiftx.com, SWIFTX.com for details. Competition excludes residents of ACT. T's and C's apply.
Smiling is contagious. When you smile, others smile back, creating a ripple effect of positivity. At Dental Boutique, we're passionate about helping people feel empowered to smile. So we invite you to a complimentary smile design session to explore your options and see yourself in a whole new light. From custom veneers to Invisalign and dental implants, we focus on achieving your dream smile. Book your nearest location today at dentalboutique.com.au and take back your smile.
There's a lot to unpack today. According to the latest ABS figures, the Bureau of Statistics, that is, GDP rose in the March quarter by 0.2% and 1.3% year on year. That skinny growth, though, wasn't enough to keep Australia out of a per capita recession, with the nation going backwards by 0.2% per person. What does all that mean for the average consumer? Good question. Let's find out with the unconventional economist, Leith Van Onselen. Morning, Leith.
G'day, Bill. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. There's a lot to unpack at the moment. Is the outlook as gloomy as it sounds?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, mate. It was another really bad release. So, as you mentioned, the economy fell by 0.2% when you divide by population growth, which is really the measure that matters, right? It doesn't matter how much the economic pie grows if everyone's slice of the pie is getting smaller, right? And that's pretty much the situation we're in now. So this was the 9th decline in 11 quarters in per capita GDP. So for 9 out of the last 11 quarters, your economic slice of the pie has been shrinking. And over those 11 quarters, everyone's slice of the economic pie is down by 1.7%. So look, it was another poor result. And it just goes to show that we're sort of in a lost decade kind of economy where we've just really got no bugger all growth, bugger all productivity, and the only thing propping up the economy really is population growth and government spending. And the growth was so bad that the Reserve Bank, in its latest statement of monetary policies, which only came out a few weeks ago after they cut the rates by 0.25%, had predicted 0.45% growth for the quarter, and that took into consideration the cyclone in Queensland, because that was known. Yet we got 0.2. So in order to meet their mid-year forecast, we now need 0.7% growth in the June quarter, which is just not going to happen. We haven't had growth like that since mid-2022, especially not with this economy. And there was some other, poor measures in here. Obviously, you and I and everyone who's listening to this call, we care about the household sector, right?
Yeah. 3
sectors of the economy. You got households, business, and government. And the one that we all live in is the household sector, right? And that generally, historically accounts for nearly 60% of the economy. It's actually fallen recently as a share because government spending's picked up. But real per capita household consumption, so that's how much we spend after inflation, you adjust for population growth, that's been falling in annual terms for 7 consecutive quarters. And it's down about 2.5% from its peak as well. So we're all spending less as well once you adjust for inflation and population growth. So it's pretty bad. The two main supports for the economy, as I said, is very high population growth through immigration, although that is, coming off, and this near record public spending from state and territory governments, which are keeping the economy growing in aggregate while our slice of the economic pie continues to shrink.
You wouldn't sort of think so. Listening to Treasurer Chalmers, though, he's acknowledged, they're a bit subdued, I think his word was, but he said any growth in the current global economic climate was a decent outcome. I don't know. What's he smoking?
Yeah, so I've got an article going up later on macrobusiness.com.au on that, and I've entitled it "Jim Chalmers puts lipstick on a pig," or on an economic pig, because that's pretty much what he's a politician. So he's doing what politicians do. He's trying to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative, but most of it's actually negative. And Australia's productivity growth is absolutely shot. We've had almost near zero productivity growth for about 8 years or something like that. It's shocking. And one of the reasons why it's shocking is because private investment has also collapsed. So, the main driver of productivity over the long run is, it's called capital deepening, right? So we increase the amount of machinery and equipment and everything workers have to work with. It makes them more productive. And unfortunately, the past couple decades or so, decade or so, because we've run this very high immigration program, we haven't had much business investment to compensate. The capital to labour ratio, so the amount of equipment and machinery and everything that workers have to work with, has shrunk. And as a result, our productivity suffered. So that's the main driver of productivity decline. And unfortunately, the national accounts showed that investment in machinery and equipment actually fell by 0.9% over the year. So we're investing less at the same time as our population, still growing by, according to the national accounts, about 1.7% in the last year. So all that tells you, Bill, is that if we don't boost this private investment and we keep growing the population like a science experiment, like by Canberra every year roughly, we're just going to continue to have poor productivity. And that's kind of the economic model we have here.
Back onto you touched on it earlier. So what is the pressure now on the RBA in terms of back-to-back rate cuts and even further? I've seen different reports that there may be a few depending on where things head.
Yeah, so the futures market are, they're like, dozens or hundreds of traders who, take bets on interest rates and whatever. So, the ASX basically correlates what their pricing is for interest rates. And after this result, which was very poor, it's basically, they ascribe basically a 91% chance that the RBA is going to cut at its next meeting in July. And so they brought forward their rate cut predictions, and they're predicting 3 rate cuts for the remainder of the year. And an end of year cash rate of 3.1%. So according to them, if you count the one we got in February, the one we got in May, and then 3 more, that's 5 rate cuts this year. 1.25% cut. So certainly this weak result, it has undershot the RBA's own forecast by a very wide margin, and it definitely increases the probability of a rate cut.
All right, so let's talk super tax, because that's been hogging the headlines, for quite a while now. Mr. Chalmers, he's rejected the idea now of working with the coalition, which seems to be at odds with what the Prime Minister was indicating, on an alternate plan to doubling the concessional tax rate on super balances 3 million plus. It's been attacked because the 3 million threshold, of course, is not indexed. What would necessarily that mean? What more people are going to be impacted over time? But where is it sitting at the moment? It seems to be a mixed message from the Treasurer and the Prime Minister.
Yeah, so you're spot on there. So Prime Minister Anthony Albanese a couple of days ago said that Labor, suggested they were going to negotiate with the coalition, and he didn't want to negotiate with the Greens. And then obviously Treasurer Chalmers yesterday said the opposite. Said they're not going to negotiate with the coalition. This policy's set. We're going to strike a deal with the Greens. The Greens support taxing unrealised gains. They actually want the threshold a bit lower to 2 million, but Labor won't do that. But there's basically 2 big issues here. I've got no problems with taxing super more. The concessions are ridiculously generous. They cost the budget about $60 billion in lost earnings. Currently it's in a couple of decades, the whole super system is supposed to cost more than the age pension. So, and the concessions obviously do flow to very high income earners predominantly. But the way they're doing it is a bit ridiculous. So instead of taxing unrealised gains, they should just increase the tax from 15% to 30%, but apply it as it is currently applied, which is just earnings within the super fund. So it's on dividends and interest and that sort of thing.
Yeah. The unrealised gains is the one that's spooking a lot of analysts and people.
Oh, mate, it's ridiculous. And it's very, very complex. You're basically introducing a whole nother level of complexity into the superannuation. We already have an existing system where you tax them at 15% earnings. So why not just double it? So that way it's simple. You just basically double what you're already doing for high balances. And it also must be indexed. It's ridiculous not to index it, because 3 million today, if you apply an inflation rate of 2.5%, which is the halfway, the RBA's target of 2 to 3%, that means that 3 million in, say, 27, 28 years will be worth 1.5 million in today in terms of purchasing power. So if we don't do this, it means that in 25 years, whatever, 25, 27, something like that, you're going to be capturing people effectively earning the equivalent or having the equivalent of 1.5 million in their account.
Yeah.
Once you adjust for inflation, and that's a bit ridiculous. And I think they also should should change up how we tax contributions as well, because at the moment it's a 15% flat tax. This was actually in the Henry Tax Review, a recommendation. And the problem with that is it basically gives the biggest concessions to higher income earners. So because it's marginal tax rate, so effectively instead of paying your marginal tax rate, you just pay 15%. So the higher your marginal tax rate, the bigger your concession. And whereas at the lower end, you get very little concession.
Yeah.
Simple solution there would just to be marginal tax rate minus 15%. So that means everyone gets the same 15% concession, but it becomes your contributions tax is progressive. So it goes up with your marginal tax rate, but you get that 15% discount. So to benefit people at the lower end, it means that the lower end would be able to save more money in superannuation, which is the point of taking them off the age pension. But it'd be a little bit less generous to people at the higher end. I think that those two reforms, get rid of the unrealised stuff, do these two things, you'd save the budget billions and billions of tax revenue, which we could use to lower income taxes and other stuff. And it would make the system more sustainable, more equitable, but we wouldn't have this extra layer of garbage with the unrealised tax.
It makes sense. That makes sense. When you're talking layers of garbage, Chalmers also confirmed that veteran federal politicians on an old defined benefits pension scheme would only have to pay the increased super tax on unrealised gains at retirement with interest added. Is that an unfair leg up for the pollies?
Oh, mate, it's typical, isn't it? Right. So mate, defined benefit pensions are the most generous pensions we've got in the country. They're paid for by us, and effectively there is no market risk. You basically, for the years you work, you just get paid a set amount that goes up with some sort of like interest type factor. They're incredibly generous, which is why we got rid of them. So excluding those people from bearing the burden is a bit ridiculous. And it's not just them, it's also, some state-based, judges and that sort of they're also excluded. So I think it's pretty unfair to exclude the lucky few and basically slag everyone else. I think everyone should be treated, fairly equally. I think that's pretty a fair principle.
Yeah.
But, such is life.
Before I let you go, what impact do you think the wage rise is going to have on business and in terms of inflation and where it's going to end up and flow through how it's going to flow through the system?
No, I don't think it's going to have much impact at all, to be fair. So effectively, we see this every time. So, the ACTU was pushing for 4.5%. The business lobby wanted 2.5%, and the Fair Work Commission settled halfway, and that's what they always do. So they always, there's an economist called Justin Farbo who has a site called Antibody Macro. It's very good, and he actually charted what the Chamber of Commerce and Industry have demanded over the last 10 years versus what the unions do, and the Fair Work Commission always basically settles in the middle. And I don't buy the argument that this is going to discourage investment and that sort of stuff. If anything, higher wages actually encourage investment because it encourages business to basically substitute labour for technology, right?
Yep.
So if you've got to pay your workers more, you're going to try and save on those by not hiring those workers, and you're going to end up, for example, buying more machinery so you don't have to employ a person to do that sort of stuff. So automation, that kind of thing, and that actually improves productivity.
Yeah.
Back to what I was saying before about the way to improve productivity is actually to give your workers more tools and machinery to work.
Yeah.
And if you want to save on labour, the best way to do it is to automate things and to have more machines do things rather than people. But that's also how you boost productivity. So I think it's, I think the scaremongering there is a bit overdone.
All right. Nice to talk as always, mate. Thanks. We'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, no worries, Bill.
The unconventional economist, Leith Van Onselen, always talking a lot of sense. There's a lot to unpack there. It's a lot of technicalities to it, but he's just able to sort of distill it down so it's easy to digest and understand a bit more, isn't it?